You guys, I'm a shirt! I'm a shirt! Look, I'm a shirt! Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime! Crue Trime. If you are new here, hi, hello. My name is Sara, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day, and I put on my makeup while I do it. So if you are into that, then you should subscribe so that you don't miss anything. So if you follow me on any of the other socials or just have been paying attention, then you have already seen this. But if not, then I have some very exciting news to share. So I have been conspiring with a very incredible artist on a new Crue Trime design, and it's ready. You guys remember that shirt that I showed you a while back from Murder Apparel, the one that was like basically a detective? They made a design just for me. Hold on to your butts. It's me. I can't even handle it. I can't even handle it. I'm a shirt, I'm a shirt, I'm a shirt, I'm a shirt. So you can get your very own Crue Trime merch. This is the crew neck sweatshirt because it's the winter times. There's also a t-shirt, there's a hooded sweatshirt, there's stickers, posters. I'm probably forgetting other things, but you can get it, and it's just in time for the holidays. And we definitely all have time to get matching outfits because we are very close to reaching 50,000 subscribers. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? And we can all match. We can all have matching shirts. So go to murderapparel.com/red. Did I do that in the right direction? Grab yourself a t-shirt. I'll wait. Okay, so this story is highly recommended and it's on brand for the Christmas season. This is the story of Jonbenet Ramsey. I finally got around to tinting my eyebrows. Look, I have eyebrows, so you can see them now. And my lashes. Just so you know, I don't really talk about what makeup I'm using and how I'm using it, so if you are interested to see what it is that I'm using, look in the description box, everything is linked. Just before 6 a.m. on the morning after Christmas of 1996, a panicked 911 call was made from the Ramsey family home in Boulder, Colorado. Patsy Ramsey was frantic. "We have a kidnapping! Hurry, please!" Patsy told the dispatcher that her 6-year-old daughter was gone and they had found a ransom note. So let's back it up a little bit, right? So John and Patsy Ramsey lived in their 6,700 square foot home, a 1920s Tudor-style home, on 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado. Boulder, if you don't know, is just north of Denver. So John and Patsy had 2 kids, 9-year-old Burke Hamilton and 6-year-old Jonbenet Patricia. Jonbenet's name came from both of them. So the father's name is Jonbenet, the mother's name is Patricia. Their combination of the names is Jonbenet, so fancy. John was very wealthy, very successful in business. He was the president and CEO of Access Graphics, a computer software company. You guys always ask about this brush. It's in the description box, I promise. Patricia Ann Patsy Ramsey was a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia 1977. Patsy and John had met in Atlanta, Georgia, and were married in 1980. They later relocated to Boulder for John's software company, and Patsy was like Susie Homemaker. She especially loved the holidays and took great care decorating their home and making it nice.
I made it nice!
The oldest child was a boy named Burke. At this time, he was 9 years old. He was just a normal kid. There's like really nothing to report there. But Jonbenet was a superstar. By the time Jonbenet was just 4 years old, she was fully immersed in the beauty pageant circuit. So you guys have definitely seen all these pictures before. You know, this kid was amazing.
I wanna be a cowboy sweetheart.
I mean, look at her. I didn't even look this good at my wedding. So by age 6, she had won the Colorado State All-Star Kids Pageant, Little Miss Charlevoix, Little Miss Colorado, America's Royale Miss and National Tiny Miss Beauty. And you can kind of read into that what you want. There's a lot of judgment about Patsy putting JonBenet in the pageant system. I'm not taking a position, I'm just reporting the facts. So on Christmas night of 1996, the Ramsey family attended a holiday party. They got home later that evening and put JonBenet to bed around 9 p.m. She had fallen asleep in the car on the way home. John carried her upstairs, and then Patsy kind of took over the rest of nighttime stuff, and John went to bed. The Ramseys were supposed to fly out to Michigan early the next morning for a post-holiday gathering with their extended family. Okay, so the next morning, Patsy was up early. It was around 5:30 a.m. She walked downstairs to start the day, and then she found a handwritten three-ish page note, ransom note, laid neatly on the stairs. It was a spiral staircase. Spiral staircase. Wasn't that everyone's dream when you were a kid? The note claimed that they had taken whoever they was. They had taken JonBenet, and they demanded $118,000 for her return. Patsy ran upstairs, and she found JonBenet's empty bed, and then she screamed out for John. Patsy called 911 at 5:52 a.m. to report the kidnapping. There's a ransom note, and our daughter's gone. So the note had all of the typical things that you would imagine to be in a ransom note. Like don't call the police, you better cooperate or else. Well, forget what was in the note. The threats, right? Patsy called 911 immediately, reported everything, and the police were there very quickly, within minutes. Once inside the home, the police kind of looked around, cursory search. They looked upstairs, they looked in the basement, all these places, and they didn't find anything. So at this point, it's a kidnapping, right? Well, the police work that morning wasn't great. So the scene was not secured. At all. So what that really means is that the evidence found or not found was not going to be useful later. Also, the Ramseys, in their panic, they called their friends for help. Come over. Something terrible has happened. Come over. So while police are around, trying to figure out what's going on, the place is, teeming with people just, walking all over the place. They're touching things, moving things. They're even, cleaning up the kitchen. They're trying to be helpful, but it's a crime scene. Also, the note, they were passing the note around. So there's multiple people's fingerprints all over this note. You guys, come on. Investigators and commentators really go hard for this note. So a typical ransom note is pretty short, direct, to the point. Not a lot of fluff, So this note, first of all, was 3 pages long. Well, you would think that someone who's busted up into somebody's house in the night to kidnap their 6-year-old, it doesn't have time to write a 3-page note. Whoever did this was calm, cool, and collected enough to sit down, and they even wrote a first draft, because in the trash can they found a crumpled up page 1 that, they abandoned. Come on. So the investigators on this case definitely all agreed that this was the weirdest note they'd ever seen, and it was very unlikely that this was written by a stranger. Also, the amount of money demanded on the note was $118,000, which just so happened to be the same amount that John Ramsey recently received as a bonus. Who would have that information, you ask? Also, the language used in this long rambling note seemed to include movie quotes, or at least be heavily inspired by movies that had ransom demand type scenarios, There was actually a movie called Ransom that had come out recently. So the note said that they would call, whoever they are, that they would call back with instructions on how to exchange this ransom, the money. So with nothing really going on at the house, it's a kidnapping scenario. She's not there. Nothing's going on. The police left later that morning. They left behind one detective. Her name was Linda Arndt, so she stayed in place to work on that ransom call, but surprise, it never came. So while they're just kind of hanging around the house, Detective Arndt asked John to look around to see if anything was amiss. Is anything missing? Is anything out of place? Anything noticeable? So with that direction, John and his friend went downstairs to the basement, and John opened the door to the way back room that's very dark unless you go inside the room to flip on the light switch, Well, John went inside, flipped on the light switch, and he saw on the ground a white blanket. Underneath that blanket, you may ask, it was Jonbenet. Her hands were tied up over her head, above her head, and she had a strip of duct tape placed over her mouth. There was a white cord around her neck. Now, at this point, John, later would say in interviews that he felt relief, like, oh, I found her. And, maybe she was just knocked out, So he picked her up and carried her upstairs to the living room. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too. Police had been at the house earlier for hours. They didn't find anything? He just found her, just like laying on the floor in the basement. Huh? Also, that detective did not go with John on this little excursion. Anyways, so yeah, John carried the body upstairs to the living room. He grabbed another blanket to cover the body, further contaminating evidence, by the way. Patsy Ramsey was hysterical, inconsolable. She laid down next to Jonbenet's lifeless body, wailing, holding her. Just sad. But evidence contamination though. I mean, what do we expect her to do? So this detective, Linda Arndt, she would later tell interviewers that she immediately feared for her safety after the discovery of Jonbenet, because she couldn't be sure if the person who had killed her wasn't still in the house, if you catch my drift. John Ramsey. So now this kidnapping has officially become a murder investigation. So upon examination of Jonbenet's body, the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The killer had used a garrote. A garrote is essentially like a string or a cord or a wire with a handle, or sometimes two handles. It helps to increase the tension on the whatever the cord is. So this garrote had been made with a cord, the white cord, and a broken paintbrush handle. So if you've seen the movie Hereditary, then you have definitely watched Toni Collette garrote her own head off. It's pretty terrible. It's very effective, but gross. Jonbenet also had a stun gun burn on her face and back. She had a catastrophic fracture to her skull. It was essentially cracked right down the middle, from the front to the back. There were also some indications that she had been sexually assaulted. So the evidence found suggests that whoever killed Jonbenet took their time doing it, and they also didn't force entry into the house. So by the following Monday, this news exploded, okay? The story was everywhere. Do you guys remember? The 24-hour news cycle, especially crime news, was in full swing. This event happened just about a year after the O.J. Simpson trial verdict. So there was definitely an appetite for this kind of thing. Also, a crime on Christmas, and it was a child beauty queen. So you guys are going to remember this, right? The footage of Jonbenet's pageants, her performances, they were inescapable. They were everywhere. Can I say, this kid was the most glamorous thing I think I had ever seen at this point. That black and white striped hat outfit. Holy shit. Do you guys know what I looked like in kindergarten? Goblin. Anyway. Well, the public at large was not into the beauty pageant situation. It was widely judged and criticized, and the media focused on the parents' role in exploiting their young daughter and potentially making her vulnerable to dangerous creeps, The police definitely suspected the parents. Most kids that are killed at that age, they're murdered by a family member, statistically. The ransom note, by the way, was written on a notepad from their own kitchen using their own pen. A handwriting analysis suggests that there were similarities with Patsy's handwriting. Also, the garrote was made from a paintbrush handle from Patsy's art supplies down in the basement. The duct tape that was found on Jonbenet's mouth also had fibers from Patsy's clothing. Well, the police suspected that the Ramseys had killed their daughter and had created an elaborate cover-up story to cover their tracks. The lead detective on this case from the Boulder Police Department was named Steve Thomas. He described what I think is a pretty believable chain of events. He said that he believed that Jonbenet had awakened during the night after wetting the bed. You heard me right. This is a little nugget that I didn't, I guess, know about until now. So Jonbenet struggled with bedwetting. Sometimes bedwetting can be an indication that a child is being abused, but not always. Sometimes there's a hormonal imbalance, sometimes there's a medical problem, and sometimes it's just a perfectly normal phase that just sucks for a while. It's normal. Detective Thomas never believed that Jonbenet had been sexually assaulted or was... He thinks that some of her injuries around her lady bits were some kind of corporal. I cannot say that. Corporal. Gosh, I cannot say that. Corporal punishment. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not going to go too far in the details about the injuries to her lady bits, but there was a little something extra than just a smack, you know? Anyways, back to it. So parenting experts cite that toileting issues are a leading factor in parental rage. I'm not a parent. I didn't know that this was a thing, but that does make sense. What he's saying is that there must have been some kind of violent confrontation brought on by the discovery that Jonbenet had wet the bed, and there was a struggle or something. Maybe Jonbenet got slammed to the floor and thrown around, and maybe she hit her head really hard on a hard surface like the sink or the toilet or the side of the bathtub. It could have been a slip and fall on accident. She was knocked out. Patsy must have thought that she died and then panicked. Do I call for help or do I make up an elaborate story? According to Detective Thomas, he asserts that one or both of the parents then took Jonbenet downstairs to the basement, staged this elaborate scene, and then also strangled Jonbenet, which is what actually killed her. The coroner's report later showed that strangulation had occurred upwards of 2.5 hours after that head injury was sustained. So somewhere between the head injury and the strangulation must have been the time when this wild, crazy ransom note was written. Allegedly. Anyways, all that said, the police totally bungled the investigation. The Boulder Police Department just didn't have the resources to handle such a complex case, and the investigation really suffered. For example, the Ramseys were not separated and questioned individually immediately, which they should have been. Of course, the police did eventually interview the Ramseys, but they were pressured by lawyers and wealthy community members who were friends of the Ramseys to give them space to allow them to grieve and also focus your attention on tracking down whoever broke into this house and did this terrible thing. The Ramseys also, of course, had no history, no records, no indications of abuse or violence or crime of any sort. They were all accounts devoted parents. So while the police department was focusing on squinting at the Ramseys as suspects, the district attorney's office was more focused on this intruder theory. Several theories emerged. Theory number 1, Patsy killed Jonbenet. Furious over repeated bedwetting, things got out of hand, she panicked, and then she staged this elaborate scene to, create this kidnapping diversion. Theory number 2, Burke, the brother. Did Burke hurt her and then John and Patsy covered it up to protect him? Or within a few miles of the Ramseys' home, there was 30 to 40 registered sex offenders in the area. So could it have been one of them? Jonbenet was buried in Atlanta, Georgia on December 31st, 1996. The Ramseys considered Atlanta their true home. They have a family burial plot there. The day after the funeral, the Ramseys sat down for a televised interview and they pled for help in solving the crime. These interviews, I don't know, if you already have your mind made up, they don't help.
We feel like there are at least 2 people on the face of this earth that know who did this.
I don't know. In August of 1998, so years later, Steve Thomas ended up resigning from the Boulder Police Department, and he published a letter totally shredding the investigation, the DA's office, the police department, all of it. He accused the DA of working against them, them being the police department, and helping the Ramseys get away with murder. Remember, he was convinced that Patsy did this. Well, 5 weeks after that, a grand jury was convened. So during this grand jury inquisition, a grand jury, by the way, is when the evidence of the case is presented to a body, a group, who review it and determine, is there enough to take this to trial? To go before a jury, all that. Well, a very interesting little nugget came up. Pineapple. Found in Jonbenet's stomach was undigested pineapple. When the Ramsey home was searched and photographed in those early stages of the investigation, there was a bowl of pineapple on the countertop. So if the food was undigested in her stomach, that means that she had to have eaten it recently, close to the time that she died. Well, when John and Patsy were interviewed, they were asked, had you ever given Jonbenet pineapple? And they said no. Well, remember when they got home from that Christmas party, she was asleep in the car, so she went straight to bed. So if the Ramseys say that Jonbenet was asleep when they got home, she had to have gotten up in the night at some point to get herself some pineapple. 6 years old. I mean, she's not a baby, but did she fix it for herself, or did someone who was up with her fix it for her? Also, the fingerprints on that particular bowl of pineapple that they found had the fingerprints of Jonbenet, Burke, and Patsy.
That's suspicious.
Is that weird? I mean, I don't know. They all live in the house. Maybe it's not weird. Well, in October of 1999, that grand jury returned a dismissal of the case and no recommendation of filing charges against the Ramseys for the murder of Jonbenet Ramsey. Did I just say Ramsey like a million times in a row? They determined that there was not enough evidence to proceed. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Where was Burke? He's 9 years old. No one's even talked about Burke, right? That day that investigation, all those people were in and out of the house, Burke stayed in his bedroom all day.
That's weird.
Is that weird? He didn't come out at all? He just stayed in bed all day? Anyways, he later said that he was afraid, all these people, and he felt the safest place in the house was his room. Burke was questioned by police after the murder and another 2 times a few years later, but he has never been charged with any crime. So I wasn't sure if I was going to even put this little nugget in the story because it's a nothing burger, but anyways. In 2006, enter 41-year-old John Mark Carr. Carr was an elementary school teacher, and he had been arrested in Thailand on child pornography charges. Disgusting monster. The authorities had tracked down Carr using emails exchanged between him and a journalism professor at the University of Colorado. Anyways, so while he was under that investigation, he confessed to drugging, sexually assaulting, and accidentally murdering Jonbenet Ramsey. Once Boulder police started to look into that little confession, it didn't take long to determine that the evidence did not match that confession at all, and John Mark Carr wasn't even in Colorado the night that Jonbenet died. So, nice try, perv. In 2008, a new examination of the evidence showed that a DNA profile that was found on Jonbenet's PJs matched an unknown male, not one of the Ramseys. The Boulder District Attorney issued a formal letter of apology to the family and cleared them as suspects. In 2013, the previously sealed documents from that 1999 grand jury were released, and it was revealed that they had decided to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on 2 counts each of child abuse. The accusations were based on the assertion that they had placed her in harm's way and that they had helped the killer. The prosecutor declined to sign that indictment, so that's why it never went anywhere. An independent investigation from the late Lou Smith uncovered previously overlooked evidence. This included a broken window and a footprint in the basement. A re-examination of DNA evidence found an unidentified male's DNA on Jonbenet's underwear. He claims that a predator, like maybe one who had noticed Jonbenet in all these child beauty pageants, he said that someone had entered that house, took her from her bed down to the basement, assaulted and killed her, and then, you know, left. But like, why write a ransom note for a dead body? And then why not take the body with you? I'm confusion. So Stephen Thomas, who after he left the Boulder Police Department, wrote a book about the case, and he went into detail about what he thinks happened and the motivations for it. He claims that Patsy was stressed out about turning 40, and she had this little mini-me dress-up doll in Jonbenet, but she was then also a dirty bedwetter, and she lost control that night in an accident, turned into a murder. So about 10 years went by without any real movement on the case, and Patsy ended up passing away at age 49 in 2006 when her cancer returned. She is buried at St. James Episcopal Cemetery in Marietta, Georgia, right next to Jonbenet. John Ramsey eventually remarried and moved to Michigan, where he lives quietly. So Burke went on to live a pretty normal, quiet life outside of public view. He graduated from Purdue University and now works pretty successfully in the high-tech industry, and he has since settled down in Michigan. There is endless coverage on this case, documentaries, books, interviews, blah, 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 and since it remains unsolved, there are always people poking around and trying to get the pieces to fit, you know? There have been many defamation lawsuits filed on behalf of and by the Ramseys over the years. The most significant one came in 2016 when a forensic pathologist named Dr. Werner Spitz was interviewed on a Detroit news channel. He straight up accused Burke of murdering his sister. Burke's attorneys demanded a retraction and Dr. Spitz refused. So then Burke filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit with $500 million in punitive damages. A confidential settlement was reached a few years later. So a couple years ago, Burke sat down for an interview with Dr. Phil, and it didn't do him any favors.
How did you feel seeing her?
A lot of sadness. I don't think I really fully grasped, like, after this, I won't see her again.
He's kind of weird, but maybe he's just really nervous. You know, he's like smiling and laughing, like...
I remember the casket was small and her eyes were closed. I think one of her eyes was a little bit like droopy or something. I thought that was weird.
I don't think it's Burke, just so you know. Also, he looks just like Patsy, right? Whoa. So this case continues to be investigated, analyzed, reviewed, and just like generally picked apart. And the DNA evidence continues to kind of flip-flop around of explaining where it comes from. Is it a person? Is it no one? Investigators are no closer to determining the true person or persons who killed Jonbenet Ramsey. And that, friends, is the unsolved mystery of the murder of Jonbenet Ramsey. Thank you guys for requesting this story so much. It is truly terrible and the perfect choice for a Christmas Crue Trime. Don't forget to check out Murder Apparel for the custom Crue Trime design, and you can save 20% on your purchase of anything at Murder Apparel with code RED20. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here every week, and you can follow me on all of the other socials as well. So that is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! Bungled the investigation. They bungled the investigation. In 2000... Jonbenet. Strangulation. Wow. Must resist the urge to keep blending. Okay, hang on. Lots going on. Lots happening. This don't look good at all. It's a very loud truck outside. Crue Trime. So go to No, I did it right. Left to right. So